Hi everyone, welcome again to Hall 2. Our next speaker is Andrzej Gornicki. He is a diver and a diving instructor who has been writing articles about diving, teaching, learning diving and diving safety. In 2020, Andrzej engaged in human factors training and since then has been writing, translating articles and sharing human factors in diving ideas within the Polish community, the diving community. He'll be speaking about the relationship between national culture and safety culture, implications for diving safety and organisational culture. In high-risk industries, it has been recognised that national culture impacts risk perception, acceptance and compliance with rules and regulations. As diving is an international activity, Andrzej's presentation will take what has been learned elsewhere and how it applies to the diving. Welcome, Andrzej. Open to you.
All right. Am I heard? Is everything fine? Okay. Give me a sec. So hello everyone. Thank you, Angie, for introducing me. I will just say my name is Andrzej Gornicki, and I'm really honored to be presenting here. It's the first Human Factor in Diving conference, and I'm glad to be here. I would like to also thank Gareth for all the support he gave me during my prepare for this event and for this presentation, and for the great work and initiative he puts in the human factors. I believe it's the most important, or one of the most important things that we can do. So thank you, Gareth. This is my also first time to do the presentation through the internet, and probably as you hear and you can see from my name, I'm not an English speaker. I mean, I'm not a native, so I hope you will forgive me any mishaps. And yeah, and let's go through. So, few words about your presenter, meaning myself. I did my master's in multicultural psychology, and my postgraduate in maritime archaeology, underwater archaeology. I'm a technical diving instructor and rebreather instructor, and I've been diving in diving industry for 17 years now. And during that time, hopefully, I had an opportunity to travel and meet other people and live in different places. Meeting and living with people from different cultures always been something that I've been interested in and always something I enjoyed. So maybe that's something that also triggered that topic for that presentation. But the idea for the presentation actually came up with one of the discussions I had with Gareth. We spoke about factors that can influence human behavior and approach to safety. And I mentioned that national culture and national background may have been an influencing factor. And that was that. We didn't push more through that subject. And then later on, Gareth approached me and asked if I would like to do this on the conference. And of course, I agreed. So that resembles what Chris just said in his presentation. I agree to things and then I think about it. So the lesson for me for the next time is to keep my mouth shut and go through things better. But anyway, here it comes. Or not. So going through so for the start, we are all more or less aware of what culture means. So let's try to narrow it down. The word culture itself can carry a lot of different meanings and can mean different things associated with other words like anthropology, psychology, history, beliefs, art, law, customs, language. Social scientists agree that the word culture might present definition problems. At the basic level, culture might be defined as the way we do things around here, or the way we think about things. So to speak about culture in different aspects, like national culture or safety culture, we would like to have some more common understanding of what culture is. So each culture consists of some elements. And those elements are, for example, symbols. Symbols are easy, recognizable, and characteristic for a given group. Those symbols can carry an emotional load. And symbols are usually carry importance and are respected within the community. Those can be symbols of a tribe or a recognition. You can think of a company logo or a diverse patch or a tattoo. So symbols are important for each culture. Heroes are another important element that are recognizable and are important for the given culture. Those are usually legendary figures or people that set the example. In some cultures, heroes can be also the anti-hero. They can be example of what not to do. Heroes are called upon in difficult situations or someone to follow in their footsteps. Heroes for one group might be an anti-hero for the other. So it's also important to remember that when we encounter different cultures. Rituals are important recurring events that shape our unconscious minds. Events like celebrating Christmas or Independence Day, birthday or Thanksgiving, but also things like tipping in restaurants. In organizations, we can think about how the meetings are done, or what is the way of communication, or how do we approach the rules. Rituals might be different for different cultures and might have opposite meaning. So it's worth noticing that outside of the group, rituals might seem irrational or even illogical. Values are broad preferences for how things are done around here, how people approach to authority or abiding rules, how society is created. Is it, for example, individual or collective? Values are transmitted by the environment in which we grew up, like the behavior of our role models, like parents or teachers, showing us what is acceptable and what is not. Values are pretty much shaped by the time we hit 10 or 12 years of age. So values are deep inside rooted in us. This is what's called onion model culture. Professor Hofstede proposed it as a representation of the culture elements I just mentioned that are they are built around the core. The deeper inside, the harder the change. And the elements at the core influence all other layers. Values that we learn in a young age are quite hard to change and influence our approach to everyday life, how we perceive outside world and how we interact with other people. So that sums the culture, and I would like to move a little bit to the national culture. The professor Hofstede I just mentioned conducted one of the most comprehensive studies of how values in the workplace are influenced by culture. In the 80s, he and his team conducted the research at IBM Corporation in 50 different countries. In all, over 116,000 workers from around the world took part. Something what is called six-dimensional culture model was created. Each dimension represents independent preferences for a state of affairs over another, and that distinguish countries from each other. And in that model, those 6 dimensions are power distance index, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term versus short-term orientation, and indulgence versus restraint. Now, in most of the studies that we are interested in, or I'm interested in, well, when we're talking about safety culture, only the first 4 are mentioned, so I will speak a little bit about those. The power distance index is the dimension that expresses the degree to which the less powerful members of a society accept and expect that the power is distributed unequally. That means people in a society handle inequalities among people. High versus low power distance index means acceptance of order in which everybody has a place and which needs no further justification, versus people striving to balance the distribution of power and demand justification for any inequalities of power. Individualism versus collectivism. Individualism, IDV, which is called IDV, focuses on the degree to which the society reinforces individual or collective achievement and interpersonal relationships. High IDV index means individuals are expected to take care only of themselves, where in collective culture, individuals can expect their relatives or member of the group to look after them in exchange for unquestioning loyalty. Masculinity versus femininity. Masculinity value represents a preference in society for achievement, heroism, assertiveness, and material rewards for success. Society at large is more competitive. Femininity stands for a preference for cooperation, modesty, caring for the weak, and quality of life. Society at large is more consensus-oriented. Uncertainty avoidance deals with a society's tolerance for uncertainty and ambiguity. UA index expresses the degree to which the members of society feel uncomfortable with uncertainty and ambiguous situations. How society deals with the fact that the future can never be known. Should we try to control the future or just let it happen? So this 6-dimension model and those 4 dimensions that I just brought up became a tool, a framework for many culture-based studies. And so let's think, if we have that model, if where we came from or how we behave does actually matter. Patrick Hennessy, a former British soldier who served in southern Helmand province in Afghanistan, wrote in his book about cultural differences and what it could lead to in stressful, difficult situations in a war environment. He writes about the book that the brochure that coalition forces distributed that had 28 pages and was called Brochure for Understanding the Culture of Coalition Forces. And that was distributed to over 5,000 Afghan soldiers to explain cultural differences. Unfortunately, it is estimated that 40% of those who received that were actually illiterate. But the examples that are on the slide, he brought up in his book and writes about it, led usually or quite often to unwanted, difficult situations. So if we have culture and national culture, I will speak a few words about safety culture. If you type in Google safety culture, you will find a lot of definitions that are more or less consistent, but here's what I came up with and what I like the most. Safety culture is about people and how they work together. It's about people's values, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. And it's also about spreading those values from top management in the organization to the top shop floor. So first of all, it's about shared values. Every single person must be aligned with those values in order to maintain strong safety culture. And strong safety culture or safety culture consists of those elements. Leadership involvement. Without the involvement of organization stakeholders and management, there can't really be an organization-wide safety culture. Leadership needs to be involved in every decision making, training and communication that relates to safety. Continuous learning. Continuous learning, safety training isn't the only component of safety culture, but I think it's a vital one. We need not only to learn and improve, but also promote learning, like today's event. Accountability. To establish a safety culture, everyone is accountable for the success of that mission. It's a team effort, and every member makes a difference. And the last one is constant support. The best tool we can give to our team is to support them. And we need every single team member in their efforts. So support means recognizing their efforts, assisting with the problems, listening to their concerns, setting a positive example, and just being a constant advocate for safety culture. So safety culture can be measured, or actually perception of safety culture is measured, because it's assumed it reflects organizational activities and policies on safety. And to predict safety-related behaviors, for example, adhering to rules or raising safety concerns or reporting safety incidents. Generally, it is assumed that where beliefs and activities in relation to safety are shared and positive, safety culture is considered strong. And to indicate a reduced likelihood of safety mishaps, conversely, fragmented and negative perceptions indicate a weak safety culture and increased susceptibility to accidents and incidents. So aviation, a few words about aviation, because probably with the healthcare and gas and oil industry, and maybe a few others, is one of the best research areas of the national culture and safety culture. On other presentations, other speakers also refer to aviation, and well, most of them, maybe some of them are having the background connected with that. So there are documented accidents from aviation, like flights that I will just speak of, that are documented as the national or safety culture issues. Avianca flight from Bogota to New York, where plane crashed due to running out of fuel on approach to JFK Kennedy, or the other flight from Seoul to Guam, where despite protests from the flight engineer, the captain continued a landing procedure in bad weather and flew into aircraft into Nemitz Hill, that also resulted in crash. NTSB, which is a National Transportation Board of Safety, determined that overruling factors that caused those accidents to happen were bad communication, pilot fatigue, lack of situational awareness, and all were roots of all of those being a culture. So in stressful and difficult situations outside standard operating procedures, national culture differences might be a game changer, might be a changing factor. And here I would like to tell you about the research about the influence of national and safety culture. Research done by Mark Nord and his team. So this is not yet about diving, but I think it has some meaning that we can relate on. Mark Nord and his team conducted survey in air traffic management and air navigation services providers in 21 European countries. Over 13,000 workers took part in the research. Scientists were looking for power distance index and uncertainty avoidance, and how they might influence safety and safety culture. So basically they were using the Hofstede framework that I spoke about earlier. Just to remind you, the power distance index is about unequal distribution of power and acceptance of that within the society. Uncertainty avoidance is how society deals with uncertain and ambiguous situations. And on the right-hand side, I'm not sure you can see where those graphs are. You can see the examples of the countries with high and low UA index. Those are not the actual countries that took part in the research, since those informations were never revealed. And the main thesis that the researchers were looking at, and they confirmed, I will just bring them up. So management commitment to safety is one of the key safety culture elements that was studied, and research have confirmed that in countries with low uncertainty avoidance index, managers will be more willing to seek out new safety problems and solutions, and will be more open to opinions and suggestions other than their own. That meant actually that they were more tolerant in search for new rather than sticking to what they already knew. Collaborating for safety. This dimension referred to attitudes and activities for safety management. People from countries with low UA index, low uncertainty avoidance values were more comfortable with opinions that contradict the group and even can cause embarrassment. Those would be more open to learn from others and share their mishaps and mistakes and learn from them. Communication. And that communication refers to communication with the stakeholders and the top management. Countries with the low uncertainty avoidance tend to be more comfortable with uncertainty and change. Communication with stakeholders is less constrained by protocols and boundaries. Such countries will be less concerned about the change, and communication will be two-way and more open, leading to more often consultations and opportunities to raise problems. Colleague commitments to safety. Again, in countries with low uncertainty avoidance index, people tend to be more tolerant of behaviors and opinions different to their own, and less concerned about the activities of others and the risk they cannot control. And incident reporting. Incident reporting refers to how respondents felt psychologically safe to report incidents. In countries with, again, low uncertainty avoidance index, workers were generally less concerned with consequences of reporting mistakes and consequences of being identified. So, just to sum up that research, respondents from countries with high uncertainty avoidance were anxious on how incidents will be perceived by colleagues. In general, participants show more concern about being identified by others and what are the consequences of filling the reports. Workers from teams from low uncertainty avoidance countries were open to developing new ways of cooperation between safety and operators. They felt psychologically safe to fill in incidents reports, and in those groups, deviation from norm causes less anxiety, leading to reduced concerns over consequences of reporting mistakes. Communication was less constrained, more open, and usually two-way. They were also less concerned about reliability of other safety-related behaviors. So Mark North and his team confirmed implications of national culture for safety culture in areas concerning management commitment to safety, communication, colleague commitment to safety, and incident reporting. In another research conducted in the 80s involving over 5,000 pilots from 36 airlines in 23 countries, showed that national differences in attitude to command rules and procedures that they were valid. Pilots from high power distance nationalities, so again, Hofstede framework, may be more likely to follow orders and adhere to standard operating procedures. Pilots from countries high on individualism may try to be more independent, more flexible, and use company procedures with more discretion. So stepping off the aviation now, and last study that I would like to bring up, it's from the construction industry. That might be interesting for those who are not convinced by the Hofstede six-dimensional model and its framework, as there are many researchers who oppose to that approach. So this is about the Swedish-Danish project on a railway link over the Öresund, known as the Copenhagen-Malmö Bridge. It's 16 kilometers of railway link, including almost 8-kilometer long bridge. What was interesting, that Danish workers had 4 times the lost time to injury rate of Swedish workers. Main differences between working teams were that Swedish workers had to pay for their first day of absence if off work due to illness or injury, where in Denmark the employer covered the costs. Swedish workers had also more formal education than their Danish counterparts, both in terms of public schooling and professional training. Danish construction workers are more likely to be induced into work practices by their supervisors, whereas Swedish workers undergo a long and structured apprenticeship with knowledge of construction methods and techniques and knowledge of health and safety practices and injury prevention. So research showed that difference of focus on schooling and apprenticeship for construction workers in Sweden as compared to the practical on-site experience and the passing down of work practices from supervisors and work team members in the Danish contingent could have contributed to the differences in lost time injury rate. In Sweden, construction workers were expected to return immediately to work after a minor injury and would carry out other tasks if they could not work on site. In Denmark, it was accepted that injured workers took a sick leave. This situation was also reinforced by differing waging practices during sick leave that were at the time added to countries. So what's interesting in this study is that even in countries that might be culturally similar, both being Scandinavian countries and generally identified by high collectivism, low power distance, and low masculinity, there are subtle differences in national and company policies and practices that have influenced on work group and individuals and thereby influenced safety culture. So safety culture, national culture, and diving. Let's think about it for a second. We are talking about human factors and safety in worldwide cultivated activity that is happening in life-threatening conditions, in unfriendly environment that people can survive in for a very precise amount of time, and that only thanks to sophisticated equipment that was designed by engineers from different cultures, manufactured by others from yet different cultures in a factory owned by another, sold by yet another, and users were trained by people from somewhere else by standards and regulations written, and so on and so on. You know what I'm getting at, right? So what could possibly go wrong? Let's think. Well, probably lots of things could go wrong. So what would be the implications? All of what I just said Here I just put a lot of logos for the training agencies, and just don't let anyone tell you that the size that matter. Actually doesn't. It's purely coincidental. All of those, or as far as I'm aware of it, do not take under consideration national differences in approach to rules, reporting, managing, or training procedures. Most of them seem to be remote and far off from the local. Even if there is a local representative present, their role is limited to usually sales or communication with high remote authority. Local dive centers, dive clubs, and independent instructors are not in strict sense employee of training agencies, but in my opinion, at least some of what has been said might apply. We can all probably think of some of the several implications for national and safety culture for diving. Some of those direct might be just coming from what was said. So remote stakeholders perceiving safety culture more positively than frontline operators, as they have less hands-on experience with dealing with incidents, with rising concerns, or with filling reports. For various reasons, they might not be interested in incident reporting, as it may create liability issues and some other difficulties. Operators, those who are lower in the organization hierarchy, with less power, in our case that might be dive masters or instructors or boat crew, often might perceive activities core to safety culture, like raising concerns, reporting errors, as less easy to engage, especially in a business-to-client relations. It might be very difficult to approach and raise an issue. Furthermore, in societies where it's not normal to challenge those in high status roles, as Beatrice said today in her presentation, those without authority those without or low in the authority may have difficulty to approach those in a higher status. So the perception of the safety culture tend to be less positive for those who are closer to the front lines, especially for practices such as incident reporting. I would like to also mention that, as I said, in organizations where beliefs and activities in relation to safety are shared and positive, safety culture is generally considered strong with organization or community, and it reduces the likelihood of mishaps. Case study analysis of industrial accidents often identified problems in power-related practices, like communication and speaking up between employees of different status, and that usually have been a causal factor for the incidents happening. So divers from cultures of high masculinity or high on individualism might be highly goal-oriented and represent more of the macho approach, and that can lead to high competition and less regard for safety measures. And enforcing more a collective approach within teams and more caring for the others approach can help induce more safety measures and strengthen concern for other safety and others' safety. And national culture involves aspects of power and social hierarchy, and that including challenging power that also can mean speaking up or stopping unsafe act by colleagues or even someone from the authority. But can also mean maneuvering around power, like reporting incidents involving those from the same club or the same team, or doing the job no matter the regulations. And that can lead us to deviation from standard operating procedures, and that was also on yesterday's presentation. So what we can learn from the what might be the direct implications for the diving industry from the Danish-Swedish project. In some of the dive industry business models are run in seasons. And in seasonal run business, several of the staff members, like instructors, dive masters, boat crew, tend to be part-time workers, not the full-time career workers. And they're usually, or maybe not usually, but sometimes they also are induced into work practices rather than being long trained through formal training or apprenticeship or internship or any other similar supervised practice. Studies on Horizon's Rail-Link project show that similar practices and additional economical factors significantly increased time lost to injury rate. So we can think of that also increasing rate of mishaps or incidents happening. On international operations like liveaboards, national culture might be a strong factor in safety also. Staff members, but also divers from other cultures, for example, high power distance cultures, may not engage in safety operations. So calling off the dive or raising safety issues related or reporting incidents, especially where there is no harm done, that might be challenging and sometimes impossible to do. So to sum up in the last 30 plus minutes, key points to take home and to consider and keep in mind. National culture has impact, and that was confirmed in the researches. Though it's mainly associated with hierarchy, ability to communicate, speaking up, but also reporting, perceiving authorities, and the acceptance of the risk. While working in the international environment, and it is worth to remember that people from different cultures with different backgrounds, different values, education, and with different cultural elements might understand and approach safety culture in different way, different communication and different approach to regulations. Ability to communicate and understand message might be different with different cultures, and message sent and received does not mean sender's intentions understood. That's what Beatrice said on her presentation. And that's especially in different culture environment or in high stress, difficult situations. Operators and divers from different cultures will have different approach to understand and follow safety procedures. And for the last sentence, I would like to emphasize that in majority of the research, strongest influence on safety culture despite national differences has involvement and communication with the top and middle management. The more those are engaged with real actions and enforcing safety culture practices, the stronger safety culture is and lesser is the risk of incident reporting. So that's what I had to say. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Gareth, again for organizing that event. And I would like to also thank my friends who allowed me to use their photos. There's my email if you'd like to reach me. And yeah, I'm ready to answer any questions if there are any.
Hi, Andre. Thanks very much. Such a good talk there on safety culture. It's very important, obviously, in the diving community. I have a question for you. Is there any current research on national culture influence in sport diving that you've looked into?
The short answer is not that I'm aware of. I haven't found anything, but I know there are several diving-related researches that are in the progress, but I'm not sure they are culture-specific. I've started something related to checklist research, and there are some national culture factors coming up, but it's not statistically valid yet, so it's not confirmed.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess that working in such a multicultural environment, what would your recommendation be on increasing safety culture? Are there any general rules or points to do it?
Well, first of all, being aware of culture differences and that national culture has an impact. It's a good start. Specific if we think of an employee or resort guest that might not be consciously aware of the fact that those differences are there, and so our awareness is just one way. But the constant support and open communication and encouraging two-way communication is quite important. We need to remember that some people are not eager to start conversation, no matter is it influenced by the cultural background or just the way they are. So engaging in human factors and safety, culture awareness, it's a team effort, and it's a training and stocking and support. And the briefing seems to be quite the tool we can take out that we can use. It's known, and we have it. So also, it's easy for us to use it, and it can encourage people to speak up. Also, reminding that there are key frontline operators with their hands-on knowledge of the everyday operation. So they need to inform about the concerns, raise issues, and if they make it a culture and transfer it to the people they work with, it's like to start making a change, or it should make a change. So focusing on the communication, on making sure that the intention, not just the communicate, is understood, where the communication comes from, and rephrase. So use forms like, from what you said, I understand, usually helps to cut the national culture differences.
And that also stems from a really strong foundation of psychological safety, where you can bring up those conversations and have open dialogue around safety culture.
Yeah, building the safety culture is one of the main changes for human factors, and it takes an effort, and it's a team effort, but it's definitely worth a while. And if we consider that we might have national culture influence in that implicates into our diving procedures, building that safety culture is even more important. Probably more difficult, but even more important.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We don't have any further questions. I'd like to thank you for your time tonight and for your presentation, or today, wherever we are in the world. So if anyone would like to continue on this conversation around safety culture with Andreas, you can visit the lobby, where there are 2 tables there called Meet the Last Hall Speaker. If you head over to Meet the Last Hall Speaker 2, Andreas is heading over there to take any additional questions or to carry on the conversation. Next up, we do have, thank you very much, Andreas.
Yep.
Thank you. Next up, we do have Geir Gunderson. You'll have to excuse my pronunciation again. Geir will be speaking about bringing CRM, or crew resource management, into military diving. So that will be in a few minutes' time at the top of the hour. So we'll see you all back then with Geir. Thank you.